So I'm going to be talking through how to become the leader of your own life using NLP. Now, the reason why I want to talk about this is because I've seen a lot, especially within the online coaching space, or if people have online businesses, where they see things, or for people who are on Instagram or social media, where people have seen other people who are successful doing things really well, or at least it looks from the outside like they're doing things really well, and then they have decided that they want to do them things, or they want to do what it appears that that other person is doing because it looks like they're being successful in what it is that they're doing. So I want to talk to you about how to actually tap into ourselves inside, rather than trying to find solutions outside of us, how to actually check in here and be the leader of our own lives, rather than being led by things or people outside of ourselves, and being influenced by things outside of ourselves that are not really going to support us. So let me know if this resonates with you. Have you ever been in a situation where you've seen somebody doing something really successfully, or at least it appears they're doing something successfully? You have thought that you should be doing them things, and so you kind of run into that direction, taking action on things that they may be doing, and then you then see somebody else doing something who looks like they're doing it really successfully, so you run in that direction and start doing that thing, and then you see somebody else. Right? I've definitely been there. Yeah, I'm going to hold my hand up and shamefully admit I have previously been in these situations. So if you've ever found yourself in this situation where you've seen something outside of yourselves, whether you've been marketed to, or whether you have been, you've seen somebody else doing something and you've thought that you need to do that because of that reason, because they look successful on the outside. An example of this, and I want to give you a real life example of this, because this isn't an example, so let me just make sure I'm being clear on this. This isn't an example of where somebody's seen something I'm doing and then done what I've been doing because they thought it was successful. It's an example where they have thought I was doing something successful, and they said to me and commented on it, and actually it wasn't successful what it was that I was doing. And it wasn't even that long ago. It was my last launch. In my last business launch that we did, the first half of the week wasn't going to plan. It wasn't going in the direction that I needed it to go in order to achieve the outcome that we wanted. And one of my students was like, "Oh wow, it looks like it's going amazing. Like, we've seen so much activity and it looks to be all going incredible." And I said, "Do you know what? It actually isn't. It isn't going successfully right now." So it's a really good example of how on the outside, on the outside looking in, it can look like things are going well. However, you don't know that that's actually going to plan. And thankfully, the launch, we did end up meeting our targets and our goals, and we pulled it round. But in that moment, when that person commented, it wasn't actually going successful. It wasn't it wasn't going the way that I needed it to go, or that I wanted it to go, or that I'd planned it to go. So it's a really good example of how, somebody from the outside can think things are really good, but then they're actually not going that well. And I wanted to use that example because that's something that I've experienced myself, because it was someone that said it to me, and it was me that was doing that activity. So how many times have we seen people who we don't know, or maybe it's someone that we follow online, or it's somebody within our social media, Polly says yes, whether it's somebody who we follow, or whose emails we get, or who we follow or pay attention to or listen to for advice. And then we think, oh, well, because they're doing that, maybe we should be doing that, whether it's them marketing in a certain way or delivering something in a certain way. So we have to really be checking in here about what is it that we want to do, what decisions do we want to make, because when we're checking in internally rather than looking externally, what we're doing is we're asking questions internally and inside of ourselves, so that we can make decisions that are aligned with us and who we are. Like, again, in the example that I gave you where it was me that was doing the activity, I was able to pull it round and have a successful outcome to what it was that I was doing. However, in that moment, what I was doing and what appeared on the outside to be looking successful wasn't actually that successful. So, people looking outside in wouldn't know what I'd done differently to make it successful. I hope that makes sense. Sophia says, I think people take things on face value, potentially, but I think what people do is they're trying to find things outside of themselves to try and find answers. But actually, when we tap into ourselves and become the leaders of our own lives rather than being led outside of ourselves, then we can truly tap into what's going to be successful for us, especially because something that may work really well for me may not work really well for somebody else. And so, like, for example, I'm really happy doing videos and I love doing them. And one of the things I talk about in my business course is that, although I would recommend doing video, if your personality type doesn't support you showing up and doing video like this, for example, then you don't need to do that. It doesn't mean, like, doing this video doesn't always equals success, etc. It could be writing, it could be a different form of marketing that supports you as an individual. Carrie says, we see what we want to, as so often don't trust ourselves. It's why values are so necessary. Being aligned massively helps. Exactly. So what I want to talk to you about today is something that's going to really help you to ask questions from within, so that when it comes to making decisions and moving forward with something, you may be inspired by something outside of yourself. However, when you decide to take action upon that inspiration, you can first check in with yourself within and then take action which inspires you from inside rather than externally. And so that way you are leading yourself rather than being led from something outside of yourself. Okay? So when it comes to being the leader of your own life and checking in with yourself, there are so many different ways that we can check in with ourselves. But today what I want to talk to you about is checking in with your three brains, our three brains. And this is something that I teach at master practitioner level. So last week I was delivering my live master practitioner course, which was epic, full 6 days of training live with me and my students. And I speak about this and train our students within this concept and this technique at that level. So I want to share this with you so that you can implement it and use it straight away, because then you'll be checking in and tapping in internally and you'll be leading yourself and be becoming the leader of yourself in your own life. So the three brains is what I want to talk about, and the three brains that we have are our head brain, our heart brain, and our gut brain. Okay, so our head brain, our heart brain, and our gut brain. And there's somebody knocking on the door. Someone's at the door. It always reminds me of that cartoon my kids used to watch with the guy Justin's house, and when someone knocks on the door they sing that song, someone's at the door, who's at the door. I'm not going to sing again to you, I promise. So the three brains then if you want to tune out now is a good time. No, I'm joking. The three brains then, we've got our head brain, our heart brain, and our gut brain. And we always used to believe that we just had our head brain, right? And there's been lots of research done around this. And it used to be believed that our brain sent signals to our body, and that was the way it went. It went our brain, and our brain sent all the signals to our body, and that was how we made decisions and create memories and how we decide what to do in our lives. But actually, hi Suzanne, actually our brains are actually sending signals the opposite way, and there's actually more signals and more information that comes from the gut brain to the head brain than there is from the head brain to the gut brain. And it passes through what's called the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is the largest nerve that we have in our body, and it runs from our brain all the way to our gut, and it's the largest nerve that we have. And as I said, there's more information that goes from the gut up to the brain than there is from the brain to the gut. And one thing that I do talk about to my NLP practitioner students is about the mind and body connection. Now, the mind and body connection is where if you think about our brains and how our brains work, so we have neural networks and neural pathways within our brains. And what happens is when we think about things, when we our thinking and thought, whatever it is that we're doing and whatever it is that we're thinking about, our brain is sending signals throughout our brain, electrical activity, right, to keep it simple. And what happens is between the synapses, this is called a synapsis gap. And that means that from one neurotransmitter to another neurotransmitter, I'm getting a bit scientific here for you, but I'll aim to keep it as simple as possible. There's a space between that, and within that space between that, our brain then, it sends kind of messages throughout the whole body, and we have what's called the mind and body connection. There was a really interesting book that was written by Elizabeth Loftus, I think she was, she's called, and it was about the heart and how we have holographic memories throughout our whole body, and how our mind sends signals and our brain sends signals throughout the whole body. So there was a lot of research done around a person who had a heart transplant, and the book kind of talks about that a lot. It's really fascinating to understand how our memories are holographic and how they're sent throughout the body. So we have the mind and body connection, and when it comes to the head, the heart and the gut brain, we want to be tapping into these parts of ourselves when it comes to needing to make decisions, when it comes to inspired action. So yes, we might see something outside of ourselves, we might see somebody doing something that inspires us, but before we take any action on that, because that can end up taking us in a direction which all of a sudden we don't know where we got there. And like Carrie said, this is why it's so important to understand about your values, because when you understand what your values are and what's important to you, that means you've already checked in within yourself. So that's another way to be able to check in and make sure you're taking action that supports you to be the leader of your own life, rather than being led by something outside of yourself. So when it comes to the three brains then, the head, the heart and the gut, we can ask questions into these areas of our body to help us in terms of making decisions about, you know, some inspired action, making decisions when we're stuck on something to do, whether we are wanting to do something but we're not quite sure, whether we're needing some clarification on something. By tapping into our head, our heart and our gut, it can support us to really come to a full 360 and help us then to make choices that are supporting us in here and not out here. So in the head brain then, a little bit more information about this, because this might be really fascinating. I love this stuff. So within the head brain, we've got 86 billion neurons. Within the heart brain, we've got 40,000. And within the gut brain, we've got 100 million. So we literally have neurons in each of these brains, each of these three parts of ourselves, that support us to help us make decisions and understand ourselves from within. So we can simply, if you're struggling to make a decision about something, or if you are just wanting to check in with yourself, so even if every single day you just check in with yourself with each of these sections of your body, start with your head and ask yourself, even if it's such as simple as, how are you today? Or how am I feeling today? And then bring your awareness down into your heart. How am I feeling today? And then bring your awareness down into your gut area. How am I feeling today? So you might want to take a few moments as you go through each of them areas. But all we're doing is we're asking these questions and bringing our awareness into each of these areas and just listening to ourselves from within. So we're being guided from in here rather than out here. Can you see there's a common theme going on here? Right? We're really guided by ourselves from within. So when and this is how to indicate where you're thinking. So if you're not using this as a tool to tap into yourself and you're finding yourself, you know, thinking about things or being less than resourceful, one way to understand if you're in your head is you'll be saying things like, I think, I reckon, I understand. When you're thinking into your heart, you'll be saying things like, my heart says, or you'll be talking about like having lightheartedness or heavy-heartedness. And when we're thinking into our gut area, you'll be using terminology like, oh, it just takes guts, or my gut tells me, or I've just got a gut feeling about something. And they're good indications as to what area of our body we're checking into and tapping into at that time. But to be the most resourceful and to help yourself and support yourself to move forward, you can use this to ask questions specifically by placing your awareness into the head, then moving into the heart, and then moving into the gut. So you're getting a full 360 feedback from inside to help you to make choices and move forward. So you're really becoming the leader of your own life rather than being led with things externally. So I hope that this was helpful. I must admit, I love this topic. It absolutely fascinates me, and I love delivering. I train and certify our students within this in the Master NLP program.